In this essay, I will explore the changes in perspective I have concerning history. I will discuss my previous and current thoughts regarding history in this class, along with areas in which my opinion has changed. I will also address my thoughts on the supporting content of this course and what I have learned from them. Before taking this class, I had originally supposed the subject of history to be merely facts about what has happened in the past. The most insightful thoughts I had regarding the subject were that we can learn from the success and mistakes of others. I had never before considered the idea that history is more than that which is known to man. I was not necessarily close-minded when it came to history, but I had not yet considered beyond the traditional definition. I also thought history to be strictly events and facts of a time period. I had always enjoyed history, but a large part of that was because I was in awe of how far mankind had come, especially over the past millennium. My very first experience with this class has been the opening lecture. Right from the start, my mind was open to different views I had not yet heard of. The fact that different people had different ideas of what history was entirely new to me. From that point on, I continued to broaden my perception of history to constitute all things that have ever been. The going to the source book that we read from was unlike any other textbook I had ever used. Rather than listing facts and giving supposed descriptions of what might have been like, there were materials from people who had experienced things firsthand. The main thing that stood out to me was the book did not strip the history down to its bones. It included the muscles of human emotions and the tissues of feelings that contributed and resulted because of the events. Most English teachers have said the words show, don't tell, and that is precisely what I thought the primary sources in our textbook did. The thing that most surprised me in its being a primary source was the ads in the newspaper for runaway slaves. Upon hearing the idea that primary sources were more reliable, I was not surprised. That makes sense. What better way to understand something than to experience it? It took me a little more thinking to put together the importance of materials such as newspaper ads. It seemed to me that because these were written with the sole purpose of recapturing slaves, they would not have much else in them. But I realized that this thought process wrong upon reading the ads themselves. I realized that even the smallest of things, with the help of the book, can provide insight into the times. The way of writing and manner in which the slave owners referred to their slaves revealed a glimpse of the true relationship between the two. As to what surprised me as not being a primary source, I do not have many thoughts. My prior knowledge of history did not consist of what was a primary source and what was not, so I readily accepted the views that I learned in this class. However, I do find it surprising that the traditional textbooks are so harshly criticized. In today's society, I believe at least, we are better able to ascertain the differences between truth and false, and textbooks can be a very reliable source of truth. There are several regulations now that would prevent the publication of false information and passing it off as a truth. Can there still be bias in textbooks? Absolutely, but such is the case with nearly every source. The main reservation I have concerning textbooks are that they do not include enough information that is not strictly fact, information gleaned from things such as journal entries or other primary sources. At the beginning of this course, I expected to better understand American history, mostly through the practices with which I am most familiar. I expected to watch lectures and take tests and memorize details. I did not, however, expect that much of the learning I would do would be in the less factual aspects of history. Now I expect that I will be able to take away from this class a new view on history in addition to knowledge gained on the history of the United States to 1865. I am better able to think of history in terms of those who lived it and what life was truly like. I no longer consider it to be something of fact and a comparison point to where we are today. I now understand the importance of combining personal experiences and analyses of those who experience the history. It should not be limited strictly to what we do know for certain, because we do not know history for certain. There is much that has happened that no one knows about, and much that only those in that time knew about. I have learned that history is constantly changing with the new things that happen each day, and that our perception of history changes as well. I also did not expect to develop a love for non-fictional books. I had only read a few previous to this class, and I loved reading about Harriet Jacobs' experiences and learning about that time through her writing. I also loved reading about Lewis and Clark with additional information provided. I learned more from those two books than I have any other history class. The main point from the assigned reading that stood out to me was that he talked of there being two histories: the history that actually exists, that is true and complete, and our understanding of history. I have always been a lover of science because there are always new things to discover. It is fluid and growing. Now I see that history is similar to science in this aspect. Just because we do not know there is alien life doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the same is true for history. I know this is a corny example, but my point is that there are fascinating discoveries to be made in history. through learning things from others and forming your own understanding of the past. I additionally liked how the reading discussed stripping things to their most simplistic state. That is a lot of what history is, reading and gathering information from primary sources to find the truth they hold. World history is, to me, well, the history of the earth. To me, this includes the earth itself, not just its inhabitants. World history also provides a way for me to experience and understand how I got here in this situation and those who have been here before me. It means the shaping of life as I know it. It is understanding. I walked into this class expecting to walk away with facts and dates that would be forgotten in a few months. Unexpectedly, I walked away with a broadened understanding of history in general. Because of this new understanding, I also gained a new appreciation for and fascination in history. I also learned the importance of vigilance. I found myself neglecting it because I had a heavy in-class course loads, and because of this, I will be more vigilant in all my classes in the future. I also learned that the best way to understand a time is through primary sources, and that primary sources are documents made by someone who experienced firsthand the instance. I learned that history includes the views of the people of a time, not just facts. I learned that history is not limited to what we know, it is what we make of it.